that we all are brothers.
Remember that we all are brothers.
All people.
All people.
And beasts and trees.
And beasts and trees.
And stone and wind.
And stone and wind.
We all descend from the one great being.
We all descend from the one great being.
Welcome, dude.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Thanks for coming to talk some shit with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So tell me a little bit about yourself. So we've spoken a couple times now, and we've talked about you were an addict in a pretty serious way, and you made your way into plant medicine facilitation. Let's talk a little bit about that journey and what that looked like, and really more importantly, what it felt like for you to move from one to the other.
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Scott. I really, have, really connected with you in such a deep way in such a short time. And so it feels really good to be here and with you as always. My journey, I guess I should start in the beginning, and I'll kind of fast forward through the mundane parts, right? But I grew up in an amazing family. My parents were awesome. I have two younger brothers that were incredible. We were, it was a perfect family dynamic as far as I was concerned, and so when I got into high school and, school wasn't quite, I didn't fit the mold. I didn't fit into the system. And so I struggled, and the pressure put on me to, succeed in an area that I was struggling in, with the attachment of, if you don't get good grades, you'll never amount to anything. Right. It was kind of the message that I was receiving at that age, which was coming from a place of absolute love, right? From the people that were delivering it. However, I subconsciously took that on, right? And continued to struggle. And so I was like, oh, well, I guess I better just start amounting to nothing now, right? Why keep trying? It's not going to work. And so that's what I did, and I hit the ground running. It escalated for me really quickly, starting with weed and at the time, which was very illegal. It's ironic now, but I paid tens of thousands of dollars and all for something that's now legal. And that quickly escalated into pills, opiates, and eventually methamphetamine and a combination of all of them. And that was my path for about another 20 years of just complete and utter darkness. This is the work I'm doing now in the world, is working with addicts and their families and how to navigate and guide and bring some clarity to what's happening, because I was so attentive to it because I didn't want to be. Right? And most addicts I feel don't want to be, right? Like no one is raising their hand saying, oh yeah, sign me up for that. Sign me up to lose my family, not be able to hold a job, right? Not be able to be in control of my own life, right? That's not something anyone wants to choose for themselves.
Right.
But that's exactly what ends up happening, right? The spiritual warfare that plays out is an internal battle, right? And so the people's external experience of an addict is like, well, just stop. Right? Like, oh, fuck, that'd be great. You know how? Right? Can you tell me what to do? Right?
Totally.
And so that was my battle, right? Of trying. And the thing was like, I didn't want to be that way, right? I wanted to stop. I just couldn't. And what I eventually learned was that the addiction had hijacked my consciousness. I was not in control, right? Rationally, there was like an energetic that was pulling me to do the opposite of what I knew to be true, what I wanted to do, what my heart was telling me to do. And the addiction just took me every time, right? And so a spiritual solution was required, right, for this problem. It wasn't going to happen in talk therapy. It wasn't going to happen in the AA, for me at least, right? I had exhausted every opinion, right? And something that I use now that has been really helpful that I witnessed myself go through is, right, like addiction will look for any place to hide whatsoever. Right. And so if there's any wiggle room, right, imagine there's a hallway with thousands of doors and all the doors are open, right? You can go this way, you can go that way, you can do, right? Addiction's going to go look in every single room, right? Before, and only one of those rooms is the answer to the solution, to help, support, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing that someone can do for an addict is close and lock all of the doors except for the one leading to help. It helps speed up the process, right? And so I looked for outs in every single thing that was put in front of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I found loopholes. I found what didn't work, what I didn't like. And that was the hiding place for addiction,
Mm-hmm.
right? And yeah, and I had exhausted everything and was still wanting to stop, right? And then ayahuasca found me and my now wife in the form of a documentary that we were watching on TV one night. And it was about ayahuasca. And one of the guys who came on to speak about it went to grad school with my now wife.
Oh, wow.
And so she called him up, right? Kind of told him what was going on. And he said, come down. We were on a plane about 2 weeks later, flying down to Costa Rica to do this.
To begin that process.
Yeah. And the medicine showed me what healing is actually about. How do I heal these parts of myself that, right? And the biggest piece in all of that was, how do I forgive the unforgivable? Because the way I was for 20 years was unforgivable to my true self, who I am, and who I always knew I was in my heart, but couldn't be because of addiction. Was the shame, the guilt, the remorse was so fucking heavy. It was killing me. And that was the end that addiction kept having. That's why I couldn't, because I didn't like myself. I still didn't. Even though I was sober, I missed so much of my daughter's life growing up. I missed, I harmed people. I hurt people. I lied. I manipulated. I stole, all of the things that go against who I knew myself to be, right? My truth. And so it showed me how to look at myself a little bit differently. It showed me so gently and so beautifully how to look at the dark places in my being and in my consciousness without attaching any guilt or shame to it.
Right.
Without going into, the actual experience. I'll say it was nothing short of a miracle what happened when I was down there. Nothing short of a miracle.
So tell me what that felt like when you first got into the medicine.
Yeah, I was scared, scary, not knowing what to expect, really wanting something to help, but not really knowing, and still carrying doubt within myself, right? That even if this works for a little while, my track record shows that like I can't sustain anything for a long period of time. So still carrying a lot of doubt and hope, right? And all of these things at the same time. And so I was scared, I didn't know what to expect. And, but the first night was really hard. There was a lot of dying. I died multiple times the first night. And almost so much so that I was like, I don't think I can do this again the next night, and I was on the fence and I almost wasn't going to do it. However, the thing that inspired me to like step back in was the fact that everyone else, there was probably 80 people there at this facility. They were all lining up again. Right. And I heard people wailing, sobbing, right. Screaming bloody murder the night before. Right. There was some women there in their 80s by themselves to do this work. Right. And they're getting in line. And I'm like, okay, if they're doing it, I have to show up. I have to keep going.
So do you attribute that to, for lack of a better word, peer pressure?
no one was telling me I had to.
No, I'm
right?
I'm
There
just
was,
saying the power
oh,
of the group, the power
community.
of community, and showing you a direction and feeling like it was pointing you in a direction.
1000%, and I still say that to this day. We were talking about where we're sitting at now a little bit before the show, and I attribute who I am today to the community that I am around and hold, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
they're these communities of such solid groups of men and women and brothers and sisters, right? There's a rising up that needs to happen. That version of me that wants to play in my shadow and feel guilt and isn't gonna connect with these people, right? And so there's like to be a part of something so beautiful and magnificent, right? There's a rising up that needs to take place, and that took place for me, and now that I feel like where I'm at today is in a place of like feeling really authentic and confident and being able to really own those parts of me, and there's nothing anybody could say about me that I don't know about myself, right? Because I've taken that journey with the help of the medicine at looking at everything, right? And so in the fight or against addiction, in this type of spiritual warfare, honesty, transparency, authenticity, and integrity are the four most important things in my life. If I slip up on one of those, it doesn't matter how much time sober I have, right? There is a chance that addiction can come back in, and who knows, another 20 years, who knows?
But so honesty, when the addict is talking, and we all have an addict. There's
Yeah.
nobody there's nobody period that doesn't have an addict that they're in relationship with and isn't fighting some sort of very quiet internal battle.
Yeah.
Whether it's with an addiction that is something you could point your finger at, or it's an addiction of story, or it's an addiction of wanting validation, or it's an addiction to your phone, or it's an addiction to, I mean, I could point to 5 addictions that I have that are,
Yeah.
very much normalized in our society,
Yeah.
whether
People pleasing,
whatever, yeah.
codependency, all of it.
Yeah. Like, and most of us don't look at those addictions as a problem. I mean, I don't know that I know more than 5 people that aren't addicted to their phone to some, maybe less than 5, that are addicted to their phone to some degree. I'm horribly addicted to my phone.
Yeah.
I have the vape. I have the story that I tell myself about myself. And the story that I tell myself about myself, I might think that I'm being honest, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Because the story, the thought mind is running the show unless we're so connected to our sense of awareness, which is what's the actual creator of thought. Which, unless we have a practice every day to connect with that awareness, the attachment and entanglement to our thought mind, it just happens naturally because you don't really see it coming in. It just comes in.
Yeah.
And then, oh, well, I'm smart. Well, I'm not good enough. Well, I'm better than. Well, I'm scared. Well, what are you scared of? Really, what are you scared of? Because 9 out of 10 things that you're scared of aren't even real.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the stories that we're spinning in the thought mind, and the way addiction works is, the honesty part is, right? Addiction, to lie to someone else, we have to lie to ourselves first, right? Mm-hmm. To manipulate someone else, we have already manipulated ourselves with the thought mind, right? To gaslight another, we've already been gaslit by the addiction or the story or the belief that we hold, mm-hmm. right? And so it's finding out what that story is trying to accomplish, mm-hmm. right? Why am I people pleasing? Why am I, lying about this thing, right? Right? Maybe it's just wanting acceptance, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's whatever it is, right? But there's the interesting part is there is typically, if we look hard enough and honestly enough, we'll find the common denominator between both, right? For this example, we'll just say the people pleaser and the authentic self, right?
Mhm.
What are they both wanting? To be accepted, to be welcome, to be loved. That's it. It feels like opposing forces happening, going in two different directions that, without taking a look at, right? Whoa, are you right? The people pleaser or the thought mind comes in and we're like, oh yeah, that's why. Oh, okay, it's fine. Right. And so the getting honest is like, actually, that's not fine. Right. The truth is, what is the truth? Right. And having, for someone that knows you, right, that can hold all of your shit is really important. Right. And because then we can take things to them, right? And they can like hold it and be like, reflect back, like, what? If we get stuck in the thought mind, they can help us reflect back, which I think is, the work we're doing in the world, right? As you and I both are supporting that process for people, because we know what it looks like.
And do you, that person or a group of people for you, is it a group or is it a person?
Uh, Mostly both, a little bit of both, a little bit of both.
What does the group look like?
So I mostly will take stuff to men.
Okay, good.
Other men, yeah. Like I'm trying to think. I have some really close sisters that I love dearly, but I take my stuff to my guys.
Good. Well, I think there's something about, and I talk about this a lot, about the value of having men and it being a group of men and from different walks of life that can mirror with a different shade on the mirror. Because if it's someone who is so much like you, they might be telling them the same bullshit that you're telling yourself. And, a lot of our work as men, as people, is to begin a process of stopping to believe our bullshit. And to stop believing that we're better than, worse than, need to people please. Because what happens is that for a great number of us, as I've experienced, is that we think that happiness is an outside in job. It's when you're people pleasing, you're looking for validation outside in to tell you that you're good, to tell you that you belong, to tell you that you're worthy. When you buy a fancy new car or a fancy new house or whatever it is, there's a point of having a car where it is an expression that's authentically aligned with who you are. And look, I was in the car business for 20 and continue to be to some degree 25 or 6 years. So I study people. So I worked in really high end cars. And so I see the motivation of why people are buying said cars. And some people come in, they're like, well, I want a car that, that's a nice car that makes me feel good, et cetera. And then I see someone coming in that's like, I want, a $500,000 car. I make $1 million a year. I want a $500,000 car, and I want everybody to know how cool I am. And that everybody's on their own journey, and it's not about judgment, but it is about, I like to take note of what's motivating people. From my assessment of plant medicine, psychedelics, any kind of heart openers, a lot of the job is to create a relationship to the inside out, where you find your validation from within or fulfillment from within. And I've always said that this work isn't about getting fulfilled. This work is about becoming fulfillment, so that you then are helping to fulfill the people around you and help them find their fulfillment, and so on and so on. I call it lighting torches. So if you light a torch for yourself, which is the inside to out job, and your torch gets lit, and you go and light the torch of the person next to you, does it do anything to extinguish your torch? And the answer is obviously no, but it does light up the room.
Yeah.
And our job in our work, in mine as a coach and starting this podcast, and you as a facilitator and a mentor and coach and all of the things that you're doing, our job is to light up the room.
Yeah.
Simply put, right?
Yeah.
So when you got out of addiction, and people began to come to you as a facilitator, how do you determine if someone is ready, if they're, able to hold themselves in that space, if they're stable enough? Because a lot of people that look towards this work are fucked up. They've got a lot of trauma. They need real containment. Science likes to tell the story that this is work that ought to be done one-on-one with a blindfold on and in a clinical setting. And our experience of this work tells a different story, and the community heals. So tell me how you determine that.
Yeah, so the safety of our group containers is first and foremost, always. That comes first before any individual or anything like that. And so typically what we do is we suggest a private ceremony first, before they can come to a group sit. If this is someone that we know and has been sitting with medicine before and has like a really long history, like, okay, there's some room there to discuss. But always, regardless of that or not, there is a requirement to work with either myself or my wife for 3 weeks leading up to and at least 2 weeks after the ceremony, for that reason, right? For a couple of things: to create safety, right? Trust is needed, right? How do we get trust? Communicating, meeting, right? Doing what we're doing right now, right? Is just talking, right? And finding out, right, some questions that are really important to know, where this person is at mentally, is like, how tightly are they holding on to the identity that they have associated with their trauma, right? What does it say about you? What does having that experience mean? Like, and how tightly are they holding? And are they willing to let it go? Right? Are they willing to be open to something else possibly happening and releasing in those spaces? And there is people that aren't, and part of my job as a facilitator is I'm not trying to sell or convince anyone that they need to do this, right? I am truthfully and authentically saying, this is the space I hold. This is what it looks like. This is what we do. Right? How does this feel like it would be beneficial for you in the journey that you are on? And some people will say, no, okay, great, amazing. Like, I can recommend some people for you, or you can, continue to search on your own, whichever, but let me know. And I'm still here, happy to help and support, because we hold a specific energy. We hold a specific type of container, that may or may not be for everybody. And that's okay. Right? Like, if, it's the safety and the trust have to be created before, right? And I think if there's a sense of safety and trust, right, people can allow themselves to really go deep and heal and have an experience that might be kind of scary, but know that, like, they can trust the people that are in this room holding them.
Yeah, no, I hear that. So the work that we're doing isn't exactly above board. And in terms of the legality, obviously you feel ethically connected to it, and you're doing God's work. And so you feel completely okay with that. And honestly, so do I. I mean, look, I would be dead.
Yeah, same.
And you would be dead. And, there's a lot to say about what this work does and could continue to do if it were legal, and if people could, like someone like you, who wasn't a therapist, could become certified. And this is something that I would love to see. You have an interview with somebody who really knows their shit, and they give you some kind of real certification. So there is a credential. What would that mean to you as someone who's committed to doing good in the world and has to do good by doing something that's not exactly quote unquote legal?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I have a pretty wide spectrum of thoughts and feelings on this. One, I think the part that goes missing in a lot of this, in a lot of these talks is right around certification and training and things like that is, if the medicine hasn't given you permission, right, to be a facilitator, it doesn't matter how much training you go to, or right, because the relationship is with the medicine, right? There's a consciousness to these medicines that we work with that will teach and guide us, right? If we even if we ask for permission, right, and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll, teach me, right? Teach me, show me how to facilitate, right? And they do, right? And so with that relationship I have with the medicine, I will say this, there's nothing that could happen inside of a ceremony that I wouldn't be able to support someone in, right? Because I've made this agreement, I've had this conversation with the medicine that it's gonna, and things have come up that I was like, what is this? But then immediately, all of the sudden, I have the solution, right? It gets given. And so there's a process there that I think is, and I totally understand people that are coming in from the clinical side of this. That's not going to make sense to them. Right?
I happen to agree with you totally. I mean, I was facilitating ceremonies for a couple of years until I went back, because I just didn't want to take on the responsibility. It was in my house, and I have a young one, and it was just a bit too much. And I had some crazy shit happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a guy go into a loop for like 7 hours. It's, it happens. And all the thing with psilocybin for sure. And Aya is that anything's possible. You're going to live, but anything is possible. And, most of the times it's a bliss out, or they cry, or they purge, but every once in a while it gets fucking weird.
It gets wild.
It gets wild. And that's a possibility. I have a really funny theory on at least psilocybin for sure. So I think that psilocybin is actually normal food from another planet that came here on the asteroid that blew up the dinosaurs. I do. I think because if you think about like mushrooms as a whole, there's the mycelium network that runs under, I think, almost the entirety of Earth.
Of the globe, yeah.
Right, of the globe. Yeah. And if you buy into this story, if my idea here, I think that it's food that is basically, so all food changes your way of being. If you eat a pizza, you feel different than if you eat a steak, than if you eat chicken, right? If you eat shitty food, you feel shitty, right? So yeah. there's some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Psychotropic element to everything you eat, drink, ingest in any way. You nicotine, all of it, sugar, a lot sugar, really. Right. So if psilocybin was food from another planet, you're just basically tapping into this other planet or this other dimension's consciousness, which is their state of consciousness. And it's different, and we're not used to it. And so as we tap into it, look, you and I have talked about it. We've both had experiences that can't be explained from here.
Yeah.
Can't be explained. And, if we talked about them to somebody who hadn't had an experience like this, they would think we're fucking nuts, because by all accounts, they're fucking nuts, but also they're real and they're possible. And there are other dimensions of consciousness, and they're real, with the assumption that none of this is real because it's a play, because, we're living in a manifestation of consciousness. So really none of it's to be taken all that seriously. Our lives become serious to us. And our consciousness is what we know to be true. Well, when we go into that space and, you eat a tiny amount of a fucking fungus, it's not a big amount. When you think about, you eat cereal, how much of that are you eating? It's a tiny amount. Or you drink a tiny amount of this tea, and you're blast it off, or DMT, you smoke one hit of the tiniest little amount of something and you're just gone. You just don't live here anymore.
Yeah.
It's interesting to know that nature, which, our mother, nature, the mother of all of it, provided these things that somehow our government or the people who are looking to control decided that wasn't going to be okay. That doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting, right? Back to like the mother nature provides parts, right? Like that's where my mind goes with, where do these things come from, right? Why are they here? Right. The universal system is in perfect balance and perfect harmony, right? The sand from the desert gets blown up into the airstream, blows over the ocean, lands in the ocean, creating algae, which sparks the entire food chain of the animal life in the ocean, right? And so on and so on, right? We see these systems playing out all the way from life, right, death, and even decomposition, right? Everything on this planet has a purpose, right? It's here for something, right? And we fit into that purpose somehow, some way, right? And back to the right. So our natural state, should be balance and harmony, like everything else, right? And so when we go to the beach and get sunburned, right, in this perfectly designed system, there just happens to be aloe vera plants that grow in places that we can get sunburned, right? In the desert, we can get bit by a snake. And just so happens that in the desert, this plant that can help and heal a snake bite just happens to grow there. Right. And so now here, right, these are all things that are more like physical 3D body, right? Physical ailments. Right. But what about the injuries that we have to our psyche, our consciousness, right? The traumas that we carry. Where's the medicine for that? Oh, here you go. God's like, here, there's that too. Yeah. It's right here. Yeah. Right. You just got to look a little harder for it and right. And be willing to, right. But there it is. Right. So there's the capacity to heal. Just about anything is very real in this 3D experience, right? I have yet to experience or see or find something that I'm like, well, yeah, that's probably not curable, right? Or healable, including physical things, right? As the mind is so powerful. And then the mind mixed with these medicines can really create the opportunity to like increase your belief, your faith, your connectedness to the co-creator that we all are.
The mind really is, I mean, it's so powerful that when somebody who's practiced can channel the energy of their mind into healing something, it's fucking wild what you can heal. I mean, look, I was going to die because of this headache condition that I felt completely helpless. And it just seemed impossible. Yeah. And going into that space and for me, it started by beginning to have some compassion for the pain itself, where I was in total resistance, which is the typical reaction to discomfort or pain, is you resist it. But, what I learned is the more I resist it, the stronger it gets. It's like going to the gym, the more resistance you play with, first of all, the bigger the muscles get, right? You start doing arm curls. And the bigger the muscle gets. And then also the stronger you get around, not just in that particular area, but the surrounding areas, the tendon strength and you're working on your biceps. Well, your triceps are naturally going to get stronger because they have to support the biceps, and it's stronger and stronger and stronger. And all of a sudden you're not really all that supple. You ever see somebody who's just so jacked that they can't even like move? Yeah. Well, that was what I was dealing with in my head. Oof. And so beginning to relax and to have compassion began to create a more supple environment for me to begin the process of healing, just to begin that. Because again, I was working in the dealership, and that's an extraordinarily adversarial arena. I mean, it's crazy. I can't tell you how many times, I did a deal, got everything, trade for a car, everything's ready. The guy walks in, he's like, okay, I want to renegotiate everything. And I'm like, well, I have somebody here waiting for the next thing. Well, fine, we're leaving. It's like, dude, I just spent, 6 hours of my time. And then I would get wound up. I would just get fired up. And I just didn't realize, like, okay, just let it go. There's another one. You don't need to fight. Just be ready to let it go. Because I think the faith in letting it go, the faith in letting the pain go, the discomfort really helped me effectively heal myself. And then I healed my relationship to my old relationship. And then I found a new relationship. And it was very much that letting go. The people say, let go, let God. That's a real thing.
Totally.
That's a real thing.
I love that, and yeah, I would need to circle back for 1 second, because what you just said really reminded me that I need to share this. This is an important part, is that when I first went to do ayahuasca, I drank it 4 nights in a row. That I didn't get clean for 2 years after that of working with the medicine, right? It wasn't a magic fix, right? And the journey for me was very similar to the journey of yours. It was a journey of faith, right? It was a journey of surrendering and letting go, right? And in that journey, right, I realized that I didn't have any faith in myself, right? And what I know now is that to not have faith in yourself, and right, you actually don't really have faith in God either, right? Because the circle and where I'm at now with faith is that, right, if the dance can't be separate from the dancer, right? The music can't be separate from the musician, and the creator cannot be separate from the creation. It's impossible. That without one, there is no other, right? And so to not have faith in myself means that I do not have faith in the creator, right? And faith it starts externally. For me, it did, at least. It started externally. I had faith in God. I had faith in the works and the medicine and all of these things. But I missed for those 2 years, I missed all of the opportunities where God is like giving me back the faith, giving me these opportunities to find faith in myself, to build back trust in myself. And I wasn't taking advantage of them because I was just looking at, please do, miraculously do something, right? And what I found faith to be, right, was the miracles that I was starting to witness and experience in my life were opportunities for me to walk through the answered prayer, right? So I had my prayers, I had my intentions, I made my offerings, all of these things, right? And was expecting it to just be like a magic wand, right? Okay, you're good, bro. Chill. You're out. You're good. You're healed. And that's not what it's like, right? Free will, right? We have to choose to let go. We have to choose to surrender. It doesn't just like happen for us, right? And so when the miracles that I have found are opportunities for me. I get to choose to walk through this door and experience the prayer being answered, right?
Yeah, I really agree with you that the faith in oneself is ultimately the faith in the creator. I always, the way that I understand God, and it seems the most logical. I don't really see God as a dude in the beard, or in the sky with a beard. The metaphor. So when I had my first ego death, and I went over to the other side, which I'm clear sounds batshit to somebody who hasn't gone through such a thing. But when I did, I was fed an amount of information that I carry back 10% of it. And it's more than I learned in the entirety of my education of all schooling. It's 10% of what I learned in that moment, or that amount of time. And it came to me, the metaphor of the sun itself being God, which would be the genesis of consciousness, and the rays of the sun being consciousness itself. So the light of the sun is consciousness itself. And then what we what we're experiencing is a manifestation of that light, of that. So we would be the photons, and all of the animals and all of the plants and all of the elders and all of the rocks and all of that would be a manifestation of consciousness. And so we are being lit by God. We are part of that, of the sunlight of consciousness. So we are part of God, albeit we are not God. We are part of God because we're the light that emanates from God. And so we are all, where if somebody were to say, well, I'm the son of God, the answer would be always yes.
Yeah.
You are that. And also you're individual to yourself. And so you have free will. The more you connect with the fact that you are a manifestation of God, the more divine coincidences and things might happen for you. I did a ceremony a couple of weeks ago with a young woman whose life, by all accounts, appears charmed. And she said, sorry, I just kicked the camera. She said in the journey, I wonder if people can tell of my relationship to God. I wonder if people are as attracted to me as they are because they can tell of my relationship to God. And I have a friend, her name is Natalie, who's been a really integral part of my journey. And she'll be on the podcast at some point. And she is probably the most divine person I've ever met, and maybe the most divine person any of us have ever met. And she has the same thing. Now, while she's aesthetically beautiful, her energy is, it's insane. It's like nothing you've ever experienced. And I think it's because she knows. And because she knows, it becomes undeniable. And so if we all begin to know that we are that, I think life becomes much, much, much easier.
Yeah. Right. It's a remembering, right? It's I think the more we step into, right, how do I say, like, right, there's a service, right? Like, what are we doing with the love that we can feel coming from God? Right? What are we doing with it? How is it like helping us? Are we an active participant, right, in the conscious healing of Mother Earth, our planet, our brothers, our sisters, right? Are we using that connection to be a part of that?
Yeah.
Right. And if the answer is yes, if you can look and see all of the parts where, like, right, and like look to see the parts that are like, actually, there is part of me that wants to, like, feel special. There's a part of me that, like, my ego really likes this, right? And just acknowledging that as we're moving through, right, that's where those are the things, the eyes of the needles that shave all of the things off so that we can stand in, like you were saying, that authentic, beautiful light that some people that we are around, right, feel, right? They can feel, or we can feel it coming out of them. And that's, would almost guarantee that's the journey they took, right? Of having to really look at those pieces, and some are born, right? Some humans are reincarnated and they've already done so much work and so many previous lifetimes that they come down here and they are just on, like, glowing their entire life, right? Helping heal, right? The going through this healing process with Mother Earth.
Well, the Vedics would say that most of us were forced to come back, and some that found consciousness in their prior lifetime made a choice to come back to heal, and to be alive is to suffer, and so to be on the other side is to no longer suffer. And so that becomes a very conscious decision to suffer so that you can heal. And that's kind of what I feel this woman did, because she just spends her life healing people. She's a meditation teacher, and she's an actress. She does all the things. But there are a few people that I've met that appear to be that, even if you don't believe it, when you just look at it objectively, they appear to
Mhm.
be here for the sole purpose to heal the world and never really did anything else.
Yeah. Right. And it's that, yeah. Right. I think, right. That's why I went through 20 years of pain, suffering, right. And addiction, was so that now, right, I can support families and other people and other ones that are struggling and suffering, right, through that process. Because what I found out about suffering in that process was the suffering comes from attachment, not attachment to external, right, but attachment to our feelings, our thoughts, right? The guilt and the shame, I was attached to it. When it came in, I would hook on, latch on, lasso that motherfucker and would ride it down the drain, right? And suffer in that process. But what is these feelings we're having? We're not meant to attach to them, right? If we can look at our feelings like bumpers in a bowling alley, right? That we're just supposed to brush up against to guide us back to center, right? If I'm, there's a very simple analogy that I like to use around, if I am feeling guilty because I haven't called my grandma in a couple of months, right? And I attach to that guilt, I'm back, oh my God, all of these other things I've done, I'm so fucking terrible, right? But that guilt, the guilt is there to brush up against, right? And so let me pick up the phone and call my grandma, right? The guilt goes away, right? And same on the other side, right? If I'm feeling above, greater than, right? I can attach to that and go for a wild ride, but I'm going to have to come back down. I'm going to have to crash back to center, or I can just acknowledge like, wow, I'm really proud of myself. I did great. And then, okay, now let me go do the dishes. Now let me take the trash out. Now let me go be of service. Right? To bring myself back to center, right? So these feelings help guide us to center, and back to these people, right? That are walking in this, they're walking the center line all the time, right? For someone like me, I dance the line, right? For me, that line is I can't walk it in a straight line. Right. But I have found tools that help me stay in the flow so that I don't get too far from center anymore.
So
I can stay grounded.
The next question I have is that because we're all addicts, and you've healed your addiction to substance, where does your addict show up now?
So I am still addicted to the plant medicine called hape. It's a tobacco.
I know a lot of people that are.
Yeah.
And is it a bunch of times a day? Is it a once a time a day? How many times?
Yeah, no, it's a bunch of times a day.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
It's something that I work on, occasionally, but other times I'm in full acceptance, and I don't, obviously I don't pretend to be in right relationship with that medicine, because I'm not, what
do you get out of it? I've done hape like maybe 10 times in my life. It's fucking awful. It's brutal.
Yeah.
What's the I think you probably just get desensitized to like the gnarliness of it, and then it's just like a bliss out for a minute. What is it for you? And pardon me, I have to pee, so I'm just gonna stand.
Yeah. Yeah, the stories that I spin around it are, that I need it to clear. It helps me focus, all of the, it helps me clear energy. It helps me get grounded. It helps me transition from this role to that role. But those are just stories. There's no fact and truth to that. That might have been true at one point, but it is no longer true. And now it's just a physical addiction and a physical habit of, serving myself up. Hey, it's just it's habitual at this point. It becomes automatic. There's not a lot of intentionality with it, other than a few times a day, where I actually give myself space to be with the medicine, right, and sit with it properly outside, right, listening to music or listening to the nature, and so there's, but all the other times there's not much intention that goes into it. It's just like, okay, like I can feel my body being like craving it. Okay, fine.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it is very much, like any other addiction in that way too. Right. It's like someone reaching for their phone. Why are you reaching for your phone? Right. You just, because you had a second to yourself.
Dude,
right.
I'm the worst.
Yeah.
Dude, the phone, literally, it's really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
And it's weird because like, I'm not looking for anything. It's just such a habit.
Yeah.
It's like, I believe that our phones have become extensions of ourselves, and they're basically a limb, and it's almost like missing limb syndrome. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah.
And so I just, it's just there. And
Yeah.
it drives my wife absolutely batty. And she's right, but it's like, it's weird because, we fight for our addictions, and I'll be like, what do you mean? But like, I know, I'm not dumb.
Yeah.
And I'm calling myself out right now, and she's going to listen to this. She's going to be like, I knew it.
I am in, at the end of May, I'm actually launching a 6-week, course around like it's called the Path to Freedom, clearing these addictions, and not major addictions, right? But addictions to our phones, to, cigarettes, none of the major drugs, but the people pleasing, codependency, coffee. Right?
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
People pleasing and codependency is a major, major drug.
Yeah. Full blown. Yeah.
That to me, if you trace a lot of chemical dependencies, they kind of start there.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Like how many people do you know that did drugs for the first time to please somebody?
Yeah. Right. So many. Right. And, the path to this type of freedom, right, is authenticity. Authenticity is freedom, period. Right. And we are all so afraid to like express authentically. Why? Right. Well, have you judged someone about when they should? Right. Okay. Well, that's why now you're going to fear that you're going to be judged. Right. Have you ridiculed? Right. And so it's the mirroring process, but which creates the people pleaser. Right. Oh, okay. I'm just going to agree with you for either because I don't have an opinion, or, I want you to like me. Right. I don't want you to think I'm weird. Whatever it is. Right. But we can only be free when we're authentic. Right. If you,
it's to be without want, right? Or it's to be with desire, but without need or want.
Right. And it is the only true reality.
Right.
That we can live is in our authentic truth. Meaning, right, if you're like, oh, hey Matt, how's it going? How are you today? And I'm like, hey, it's going great, right? Even though I'm like, over here like debating and like, do I do drugs today? Do I not? Right? But I tell you I'm great, right? Now we just connect. I just created an alternate reality that you now have to connect with me in.
I have to meet you there, right? Yeah.
And so now I'm stuck in my own reality of like doubt and challenges all by myself, which is what these things want.
Because you also don't want to call yourself out, because if you call yourself out, you're going to be accountable to what the next thing they're going to say is okay. Well, so you're dealing with your addict right now. Let's get into that. And you don't want to get into that. You don't want to be caught. You don't want to get caught, even though ultimately I think we all want to get caught.
Totally. Right. And so, I'm at a place now within my own life where like, I will say it, right? No matter what, right? I call myself out to my wife all the time. Hey, I'm like, we're feeling really squirmy today.
How does she hold that?
She'll ask me if there's anything that I need. Right. And is there anything I can do to support you? Does she go into
worry?
No, not anymore, right? Because she's seen the benefit of it working, right? Of me coming and acknowledging, and it's just a squirminess, right? It hasn't even gotten to the point of like thinking about it or romanticizing it in any way. It's just an uneasiness, squirminess that I know from studying myself so deeply is addiction. Right. It's wanting to blow up everything. It's self-sabotage. And so when I can feel it, I'll name it. And typically just naming it to someone else is enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you catch it early enough,
Mm-hmm.
just naming it and letting someone else hold that with you is enough. And yeah, it is that because that's my authentic truth in that moment, right? I have to completely, my awareness is so fixated and attuned to what is happening inside of me, because it needs to be.
I mean,
Right?
dude, this is some high level shit. Like you're at a high level.
Yeah.
What would some advice be for someone who's, pardon me, what would your advice be for someone who's fighting the silent fight, who's in the silent battle? Alcohol is a real big one. I was an alcoholic for, I don't know, ever, until one day I just stopped and I never thought about it again. I have a weird ability to do that, and I literally never did it again. I think I've thought about it 3 times, maybe in 4 years.
Wow.
I just stopped,
Yeah.
which is crazy because my wife's ex-husband, who's my brother on the planet, and we talked about that. He loves to drink and he loves to go out and party and celebrate, and that's what we did. And she came up to me one day, the day after St. Patrick's Day, and she's like, "This isn't going to work for me." And I said, "Fine, I won't drink for a month." And she's like, "No, you're not listening to me." I said, "This isn't going to work for me." And that was the last time I had a drink of any kind for any reason. And I don't really know how I did it, other than I just made a decision. And I had the ketamine thing, and that one I think about when I'm in any kind of pain. I do. But I don't think that was as bad as the other. I think that was that started, and it really helped me with social anxiety, and it helped me with, I don't really love to be in big groups of people unless they're aimed in the same direction. Like if I'm in a men's team meeting, I'm perfectly fine because I know that we're all doing the same thing. If I go to a journey, to a ceremony, I know that everybody's there for the same reason. They're doing the same thing. There's not a lot of crosstalk. There's not a lot of ambient noise. It's not fucking around. We're there for
small talk.
First of all, small talk is the enemy of my being. And I'm not a people pleaser, kind of at all. And so people will think I'm a dick because I just won't engage in small talk. It's not interesting to me. And if it's not interesting to me, I'll just walk away. And I don't mean to be a dick. I'm just intolerant to it.
Yeah. So one of my buddies, I got to give him a shout out because he's one of my guys that we were talking about earlier. My brother Jeremiah, he always, when we've had this conversation, and he's so brilliant at this, he'll walk right up to somebody, and even if he knows them or doesn't know them, like, "Hey, how's it going? Right? What is exciting in your life right now? Right? What are you passionate? What gets you out?" That was like what he leads with, instead of like, "Oh, beautiful day," or "Whoa, what?"
I like that.
Like he goes right in with like, "What are you excited about right now?"
I like that.
Right? What is it? Yeah, and it's such a great. And the response is people light up.
Right? That's what they actually want. They just have social anxiety, and so talking about the weather. I mean, dude, how many conversations start with, "Oh, it's fucking raining out."
Right.
You're like, Jesus. And I'm guilty of it too.
Right. We all are.
But I don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, no.
Unless it's like a dope storm, then I do, because I do love that shit. But so what do you think you've heard are some misconceptions like around plant medicine? What dumb I'm going to say dumb things have you heard from people that you get a chuckle out of, or "Oh, I'm gonna go crazy," or what have you?
I think like that it's gonna fix everything, that it's like somehow a magical cure.
Mm.
And there is miraculous things that can happen, no doubt. I could, that maybe that's for another time, right? But I've had back and injuries and like healed like instantaneously but it's not, it is, we still have to integrate. We still have to show up and do it differently. The medicine can show us a different way, but it's still up to us to do it differently, and same with the like back to that addiction question, right? Like what does somebody who's new and in that internal battle need to do? Something different, right? And that different thing might not work the first time. Great, that's fine, right? But you gotta make something different, and then something different from that, and right? And I think to bring this back into like right, I like to consider myself as someone who practices like grounded spirituality, and so right, like if someone comes and it's like, oh my God, I just talked to Jesus, right, for the last 3 hours, right, I'm so special, Jesus chose me to talk to me, right? Like okay, but like what did he tell, like how's that gonna help humanity? How's that gonna help your life? How's that gonna help your family, your community, your friends, right? And so I think that like,
but is that kicking them out of the feeling of being?
No, right? Like, because it's like, what do you say, right? Okay, now how are you interpreting that, right? Because what the ultimate goal of plant medicine is right. It's a medicine. It's here to heal. It's not necessarily here to make you feel like you're part of a secret club that has some answers that other people don't, right? There's people that have access to this type of consciousness and information without medicine. Fuck, I wish I was that. I wish I had that type of awareness and ability, but I don't. I need the support of plant medicine, right? To access those higher levels of consciousness. Will that be the case forever? I've surrendered that, right? I'm following the path,
right,
and we'll see where it goes. But I think that's the common misconception, is that that I see in a lot of these circles is, right, once the ego dies, the spiritual ego awakens, right? And then there's
new ego.
A new ego, dude. It's the spiritual ego. It's I'm like, right. And so, and again, like there's zero judgment, like zero judgment. I have come to a place where I can literally understand and look at someone and honor where they are at on their path, right? And accept them completely right where they're at. Where, that hasn't always been the case with me, but that is where I'm at now, truthfully, authentically, right? And so it's not a judgment at all, right? That's their path, right? That path might lead them to some amazing, beautiful place that is beyond what I'm available to see, right? Or know. And so I'm not going to shame or judge anybody in that space of, and really like allowing them to be in their greatness, right? Like that's such a big part of this, right? But there is a difference between authentic, true greatness that also has humility in there, right? Our authentic greatness is also our humanness, right? It's all in the same. And so if there is not a little bit of humility, right, I'm like, okay, like you haven't gotten there yet, right? And then when they get there, they'll have humility.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's an energetic that you can feel.
Yeah.
Right. But there is, right, the pendulum of not having any self-worth, right? If we're at that place, the pendulum has to swing all the way to the other side, right? To I'm superior and I'm great and I'm amazing and special.
Yeah.
Right. It has to, so that we can know the extremes and find center. Right. So I don't expect someone who's coming out of a place of zero self-worth to just fall right into like the center line, right? The pendulum has to swing, right? So if someone's on that part, okay, great, amazing. They're in their journey, right? They're in their process. Fantastic.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is when these people, what can happen is something comes in, it is disintegrated, and the integration requires listening to some hard questions and doing something different, and being open to being challenged in everything. That is very difficult for a lot of people to sit through. Especially when it's fresh. When it's fresh, they want to feel the thing, and I know this because I've sat in hundreds of circles, and I've worked with integration with dozens, if not hundreds, of people.
Yeah.
Tell me your idea of what integration means.
Yeah. So integration means, for me, like either changed behavior or shifted way of being, right? An expansion that is playing out in real time in my life. It has become a part of who I am now. And one of my teachers, Kai Carolan, he says all of the time, he's like, if Jesus comes to you, or angels, or whoever comes to you and tells you something, hold it for a week, 3 weeks. What does this mean for me? How can I apply this in my life? And we ask them for more, right? Help me understand this more, right? Versus hearing the message and then just speaking it like instantaneously, right? Oh my God, I've had this insight, I had this awareness, right? We're missing the part of a deeper understanding, right? When we receive these messages, it's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more depth to the phrases or paragraphs that we might hear or see inside of a journey. And so to really like hold it, what does this mean? How can I apply this in my life? Right? Even if the message is for someone else, let's say, right? Well, it's coming through us, so it's for us first. So let me understand it before I share it with the person who I'm supposed to share it with. And so that is an extra added step of integration to hold something when we're so excited about it, right? Like it's the very similar to like, in men's work, right? The leaky sexual energy of excitement and passion, right? That we're thinking from a place inside of ourselves, right? But we can learn to hold it. Let me hold this and watch what happens, right? When we hold our sexual energy, right? We feel more empowered, right? More confident, more clear, more expressive. And when we are able to release it, right? And so there's a beauty that gets created that we can't understand or know or feel until we've done it, right? And so to be able to hold excitement, to hold desires without the immediate impulse acting on it, it does create a deeper level of understanding and connection about these things that excite us, our passions, our desires, and things like that.
Do you see the trap when you tell somebody to sit with it, that they can become heady and begin to spin out stories that begin to become in disservice of the experience?
Yeah. So I think, what you're getting at is so important, right? Is that there is people are in such susceptible, vulnerable states of consciousness when we're on medicine, and even afterwards, right? And so there is a way to say things to someone that isn't going to create that or trigger that part of like, oh, I did something wrong, I'm doing it wrong, I need to, right? Well, in doubt, and it's sovereignty, right? It's giving them their own sovereignty. Look, you like, that's great, right? And you can go ahead and share that all you want, and like, it's going to be fantastic. But what if you held on to that for a little bit? What if there's more to the story than right? What if, right? And so you're creating the opportunity for them to make their own choice, right? Is really helping people remain sovereign as a facilitator, as a teacher, is so important, right? Because that should be the goal. That's my goal when working with people and holding spaces, is for people to find their authentic knowing, their authentic remembering, and their authentic expression, period. In our space, people are allowed to offer songs, prayers. It's not my show. It's not the Matt show. It's not my Matt and Jen show. It is a collective. And when I share teachings or stories inside of the space, there's open dialogue, right? What did you think? How did you hear it? Right. And there's like, not crosstalk, right? Our ceremony is very intimate and
Are you a
small,
quiet? Are you a quiet ceremony?
Except for certain times. Yeah. There is parts of noble silence. And then other parts that, not only if it's in relation to like what we're working with, what we're working through as a collective.
And when you do a heart opening ceremony, that's also silent?
Yes. There's noble silence in the beginning, and then, there's opportunities to, share and discuss about some of the teachings and stories within that. What does it mean to you? Right. And there's embodiment practices that we do that help, so sometimes there's, sounds and things like that are helpful. People are singing. So there is some, and then we go back to noble silence. And so there, depending on the flow of the container and the ceremony, but right, it's a collective, right? There's sovereignty. Other people are great. They're right. I'm not special. I'm not unique. We all are. We all are the same special, unique, amazing, incredible human beings that have so much to offer. So I want to create the space to offer it, right? Please say more, do more.
What do you do if someone comes into a ceremony and starts to eat up the space and starts to try to take over energetically?
Yeah, so it hasn't happened yet. And why I think that hasn't happened yet is because our container is really solid, right? We have a collective and a community that knows how to hold. And, my wife and I leading by example, kind of like there's a current and an energetic that's felt that that is so beautiful. Most people don't want to disrupt that. So I haven't had that experience yet, but yeah, I think, if that were to happen, I would just kind of invite someone to, maybe step outside and express in that way, and just let them know that right now, this is what we're doing. If you want to continue doing that, like, you're more than welcome to. I'll send one of my guardians or our guardian we'll go outside with them and allow them to do that.
It's incredible.
They're doing.
Last question. How do you envision addiction treatment along with psychedelic medicine progressing and moving forward?
That's a great question. I think, moving forward, I think that we shouldn't close the door on any one way of healing, right? To any ways of healing, right? Meaning, right, we were talking about the therapeutic way with the blindfold, and I think that should be a way.
Yeah.
Right. I think there's people that need it that way, and I think it should be a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way I'm doing it now should be a way. I think AA should be a way. I think smart recovery should be a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think the more open doors we have of paths to healing, the better, right? For so long, it's been just AA, 30-day treatment centers, right? And and those work for a lot of people, and they're amazing, right? I'm not knocking them. I keep those. They're doing well.
They are.
But there's other things that also, right, are doing well and are helping and are being supportive. And so I think the psychedelics are part of that process, right? It's not a cure. However, it does start to open you up to something different.
I
a new way of looking.
I actually, I journey with someone I've journeyed with a lot of people who are in the program. And there's a funny through line that a lot of them believe that psychedelics is the 13th step, because they're not really addictive. And they do open your eyes and your mind to a different set of possibilities for yourself, and a different relationship between your awareness and your ego, yourself and your surroundings, your connection to nature. Really important, really important is our connection to nature. Are we honoring I recorded a podcast with someone who I'm re-recording on Monday. You're gonna lose your mind when you hear about this. When you hear this guy's story, I'm not gonna give it away, but he talks about our elders, and he talks about the elders not being people, but being the trees and the rocks, and and he calls them the tree people and the rock people and the winged ones and the ant people and all of the things that were here before us, and that'll be here after us. And when you make yourself smaller in the bigness of what we reside in, and you become less important while still being special, but less important in the story, I think it's a lot easier to not fall into addiction, because we tend to make ourselves really big in our world, and there's a lot of shit in our world that's a lot bigger than us, and we forget. And I don't get in nature nearly as much as I ought to. And, my wife, she goes on hikes and does all these things. And I used to do it constantly, and I stopped doing that. And so I'm actually going to make a commitment to begin that process again, having just kind of tapped into that right now. Listen, man,
I'll go with you.
The work you're doing is noble. The way you hold it is incredible. And the sacredness that you go through life with, I think, is really important and impressive, and a real model for other men to begin to look up to. And I know you probably don't want to be looked up to, and I'm sure it happens a lot, because you know your flaws and your stories, and I go through the same thing, but I really enjoyed connecting with you and talking to you, and I can't wait to do this again, and I can't wait to sit in ceremony with you, man.
Yeah, same. And let me know when you go hiking. I'll join you.
I love it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, brother.